So sounds good. All right, you moving forward. Those who have joined us for the past sessions have known this already, but for the first timers, you may be wondering why Agony Expert series. So we have drawn inspiration from an agony aunt, who by definition is a person who writes a column in a newspaper or magazine in which they reply to readers who have written to them for advice on their personal problems. So in short, it's kind of a play on that concept, thus the agony expert that we have now, where you, our participants, can share what problems and struggles you're facing within your organization and seek insight directly from our expert today. So this session is just the ninth of the many, by the way. So as you can see on the screen, together with a total of 17 world-class experts that we have gathered, they will be covering 8 different topics that are timely and relevant in our industry today. And well, the good news is you can cherry pick what session you'd like to attend, or maybe sign up for all if you want. So we would love to welcome you all throughout the session. And today it will be about engaging with the remote workforce. So it's an honor to introduce our guest expert, Ian Schubach, the CEO of Redly. So it's currently based in Sydney, Australia. And as what he shared earlier, he's adventurous himself. So it really resonates what you have there as your background, Ian. Loving it. And today he will speak about importance of culture and how to engage employees who are working from home in a COVID impacted world. And just a little bit of the background of who we are. So People is a consulting firm that started in 2004, sold itself and relaunched last year, 2020, with a consulting model geared towards the future of work. So our team serves both our clients and our network of over 1,000 experts. So who are these experts? So we have consultants, business leaders, thought leaders, researchers, and tech partners. So together, we deliver consulting work, speaking engagements, lunch and learns, training, coaching, instructional design, organizational, and people diagnostics. Our experts deliver work across 6 broad domains, mainly people, digital innovation, business, sustainability, change management, and design. So in short, people can attend to any business challenge you might have. So do check out our website and find out more about us at www.pearl.com. So that's Pearl with double P, okay? And just a quick run through what's going to happen today. We have Ian to address the group for approximately 25 minutes, followed by the Q&A with you for another 25 minutes. And then we will go wrapping things up for you in the last remaining 5 minutes for us to get feedback of what you think of today's session. So again, we would love to receive your questions and drop them in the chat box, and we'll address them during the Q&A session. So today's topic is really going to be insightful for us who are now in a hybrid workplace. Okay, so I won't keep you any longer. I'm handing it over to you, Ian. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Marley. Thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to the next session. I'll share my screen and we'll get cracking straight away. We don't have a lot of time. Cool. So my name is Ian Schubach. I now live, as Marley described, in Sydney, down here in Australia. But for those of you that are well versed in understanding accents and things, I'm not originally from Australia. My first 30 years of my life I spent in South Africa, and in my early 20s I worked as a safari guide close to the Kruger National Park in eastern Southern Africa. I worked in the ecotourism industry, and you would think it would be strange for somebody that was a safari guide to now be involved in running a leadership consultancy practice out of Sydney. But my personal story really began in the bush. I'm a passionate adventurer and explorer of all things natural. And actually, my interest in business and leadership came after I heard some of my clients that were the back of the safari vehicle turning around at times that come from all over the world to come and view this magnificent wild ecosystem. On occasions, they would turn around and say, gee, I wish my team back in the office behaved like that pride of lion. And, I had an interest in wildlife, and I was well versed in wildlife behavior. And in particular, I love lions. So that for me was a strange statement. And it was so strange that I actually asked that person that mentioned it what they meant by that. Because in my mind, I thought about a wild pride of lions in Africa and all the drama and the hunting and the blood and the guts and the gore. That's what I was thinking. But around a campfire one evening, the person turned around to me that made that statement and said, no, you're missing the point. What I saw in that pride of lion were a group of individuals where each individual knew what their role was in a collective pursuit of an animal, where the lionesses looked after those cubs in a particular way, where the male lions patrolled the territory in a particular way. And those are the kind of things that I want to see more of in my organization: the clarity of the role, the understanding of the goal, the flat structure, the accountability. That was the language that that person used. And that got me really intrigued. And to cut a long story short, I became so intrigued that I decided to change the way in which I viewed the wildlife around me. And I started to view it through the lens of my clients, the tourists, and they were business people. I developed a presentation on lion prides, and I connected it to high performance teams, and I went on the professional speaking circuit, initially in South Africa and then kind of around the world. But like many people in life, you get a little bored with doing just one thing, and I got tired of just doing one keynote presentation. You really can't influence people in a significant, or put it this way, it's harder to influence people by just talking at them. And I'm a firm believer in experiential learning, that people have different preferred ways of learning, and experiential learning by doing is a powerful adjunct to just talking. So I developed a series of workshops, and I'm going to be taking you through one of those workshops, or an example of one of those workshops, and a use case today that'll show you how we certainly help engage and connect a remote workforce. That's the purpose of this session. So, there's not many of us on this call. I'm very hopeful that you'll stop me at certain points and you'll ask questions. And I'm happy to kind of turn this into more of a fireside chat, if you will, rather than necessarily a keynote presentation. So welcome to one of my favorite, or two of my favorite things, adventure and engaging a workforce. So as always, you kind of want to start with kind of why we're doing this. What's the point, isn't it? And the first thing is, why does culture matter? And there's just no doubt that culture is an absolutely crucial element to high performance organizations. I mean, just at the most basic level, if you look at those 3 points dead ahead, these are some of the and there's many like this. This is just 3 that I picked up. There's no doubt that valuing your talent, selecting your talent, valuing your talent, and retaining the best talent in an organization is crucial to sustainable competitive advantage in the modern world. No doubt. That third point down there that talks to, and this is even more serious, is that if a company doesn't value the psychological well-being, i.e. people that are engaged and connected and feel like they're delivering with a sense of purpose, that's part of it.
Yeah. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
You have a black screen on the right side. Is that just me, or
a black screen?
You've got a black square that's covering up
Black
why
square.
culture matters in some of the words.
Oh, sorry about that. I think that's my chat function. Excuse me for a second. That's a weird thing. I was hoping to pick it up. Let's hope
Yes,
this.
that's better.
Thank you for letting me know. I thought that I could just see that. How's that?
Yep. Good.
All right.
Thank you.
Fantastic. So, let me jump back on this idea around culture and why it matters. It matters because leadership is a top driver around driving employee satisfaction. Engaged employees are more productive. We hold on to them, we hold on to them, and we hold on to their knowledge, and they are more innovative. And then that final last point that I was talking about before is this idea around just the pure humanness of looking after employees' well-being and the potential of increasing mental health challenges and depression, and how important that is. So, there's a business case, but then there's also just a human case for connecting with people and to work on the culture. Some of you may be familiar with this. This is a concept from a fellow that I greatly respect. His name is Patrick Lencioni, and he's a thought leader out of California. And he talks to building sustainable competitive advantage through culture. And in his view, organizations need to be both smart and healthy. And if you think about things that make an organization smart, it's all the things that sit on the left-hand side of that slide over there. You need to have a great strategy or a cohesive strategy. You need to be skilled at marketing and finance. You need to have great technology, systems, processes, structure, all of that. And to be honest, that's the kind of thing that we go to business school to learn, don't we? And when quizzed, most senior executives say that they spend up to 95% of their time in organizations improving the smart. But if you flip it on the other side of the equation over there and think about healthy, and what do they mean by healthy here? We're not talking about only physical health. We're talking about a healthy culture. And what does a healthy culture look like? Well, it's a culture where there's minimal politics. Note that he doesn't say no politics, but he says minimal politics, and there's minimal confusion. In other words, there's clarity around purpose and clarity around strategy. That results, of course, in high morale and low turnover. And what we mean by turnover here is staff turnover. So, wanted attrition, those rates are appropriately high in these organizations, but unwanted attrition is really low. So you hold on to your best people. And quite frankly, people that are not suited to that organization feel uncomfortable and they leave. But whilst senior executives say they spend 95% of their time in the smart, that tells you that in the healthy side of things, there's a deficit of energy spent. And to be honest, in my view, the source of competitive advantage, sustainable competitive advantage, lies in health. Because if you think about it, what happens if you have an organization that has a toxic culture or an unhealthy culture is that your best people leave. And that leaves you with, obviously, by definition, people that you don't necessarily value in your organization. And there's a cycle that starts to develop around that. And that's something that you obviously want to avoid. So that's why culture matters, and that's why engagement with your people matter. But now this is a challenge in an environment like we have right now, where the predominant context is COVID. There are parts of the world, the UK, the States, hopefully, but certainly the UK, that's starting to emerge and starting to talk about a future where COVID is no longer the predominant context. But for most of us that are on this call, COVID is a significant factor in keeping our people in a situation where most of them are working from home or at very least remote. And the question is, well, how do we still engage our people in the organization, still build that sustainable competitive or maintain that sustainable competitive advantage in a remote environment? And for me, the thing that really matters here is that we need to engage people rationally, give them a sense of what they need to do and how they need to go about doing that, but probably even more importantly, why they're doing what they're doing and what they expect to come. In other words, build what's next, build a positive future for them to awake and to connect and inspire. So that's why I'm such a passionate believer in adventure as one way to do that, is to guide people both rationally and emotionally in the why. So that's what the remainder of my sort of presentation is going to be about. Is I'm going to show you how we do that at Redleaf, and then answer any questions that you might have around your particular situation. And hopefully, I'd like you to challenge some of the ideas in this as well. So here goes. So part of this experience is all going to be about taking you as a group of individuals in teams up a mountain.
Modern research suggests that people learn best when they are exposed to a variety of learning styles, and listening is only one. We believe that people learn best by doing, by engaging people both rationally and emotionally. So the idea of an indoor virtual adventure was born. Why not bring the excitement of a physically demanding adventure into the safety of a conference room or video call?
We pick a goal and we set off. We film everything, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Cameras everywhere. When we come back after the expedition, we lay all of the footage down and we determine which moments of that expedition were key. Where were the critical moments for success in that expedition? We isolate those and then we throw some options. We attach some options, the same options that we faced, and we take a corporate audience, much like yourselves, break them up into teams, and they'll say, if you were us in the field, faced with those same set of circumstances, with those same options, what would you do? You make a choice, and we play you the consequence of that choice immediately. Not just to you, but to everyone in the room, which is really cool. Well, it's all about testing ourselves in an environment that's constantly changing. It's about making decisions as a team and then living with the consequences. It's about recalibration, it's about resilience. These are the themes that we need to talk about to enable teamwork and to enable relationships, and to enable us to have better relationships ultimately with our partners, our clients.
They can be delivered both online and face-to-face. They are intellectually interesting, but also fun. And they can be designed around any event. You could use a virtual adventure to kick off an event, to get everyone excited and energized, and then tackle a different part of the agenda, and then switch back to the virtual adventure at a later stage. When used like this, they can help manage energy and build enthusiasm for the duration of the program.
But just to give you a sense of how this all works, I'm going to show you a clip that goes for a minute or so. It's from one of our climbs in the New Zealand Southern Alps. It's going to run for about 60 seconds and it'll end up in a problem, right, with some options. I'm going to ask you as an individual, what would you do if you were us in that situation?
No, the ridge is too dangerous.
Descending an alpine face in these conditions would risk both our lives. Equipped with shovels and cooking gear, we decided to build an emergency shelter and wait out the storm. We have food and fuel for no more than 2 days. By the following morning, the wind has abated, and we decide to take our chance to push while we can.
Oh shit! Shit! There we go.
So that gives you a bit of a sense of how one of our programs works, which are what these virtual adventures. We can deliver them online or face to face. You saw a bit of a blend of the different styles in that video here. I think what I'll do is I'll probably pause a little bit and just get you to start thinking a little bit about some of the questions you might have around that and how they might work. So go ahead and enter those into the chat function. But whilst you do that, I might just kind of walk you through this slide a little bit, just to give you a bit more context, a bit more detail here. So what we do is these are video-based experiences. So like I explained at the start, a group of friends and I typically go out into the field and we film everything. And then we come back and we look at the experience in a studio, and we identify those key moments. And then we create a choose your own adventure decision tree, where we would take a normal corporate audience that could be 500 people in a room, or it could be thousands of people online. And we ask them to imagine that they were us in the field, faced with the same set of circumstances that we just faced, with the same options that we just faced. And we get them to make either an individual or a team-based decision. And then we play them the consequence of that decision that they've just made, which leads to another one, and another one, and another one, and another one. So it's like the best way to describe it is interactive documentary. An interactive documentary, a hosted or facilitated interactive documentary. And then, of course, along the way, and this is where the facilitator-led piece comes in, along the way, what we do is we connect the idea around who made what decision. We connect that to the particular business challenge or problem that a client is facing at the time. So an example could be around risk. One of the things that clients often approach us with is say, we want our workforce to think about risk in a different way. We'd like to grow faster. We're prepared to accept elevated levels of risk to do that. And we want to encourage our people to take more risks and to be less afraid of failure. That could be an example. And some of our enlightened colleagues turn around that. So we would then take risk, and we'd look at risk within a mountain climb or an animal tracking experience or a sailing expedition. And we'd play a storyline that runs and highlights the importance of that. But the key part is during the experience itself, we'll stop and we'll host a facilitated conversation about risk within that organization. So what we're doing is we're running sort of two journeys at once. Ironically enough, we're running a virtual adventure, which is engaging and engages the heart, but is ironically safe. At the same time, we're asking learners, participants, an audience to think about how that applies to them and their teams. So that's why
Sorry,
it's
Ian?
facilitator-led. Yes.
I can see the small bar that's a green and red. Share. It says that you're sharing screen.
Yes.
Yeah, we can see it on your screen.
Okay. How do I get rid of that?
The small bar. I'm not quite sure, but yeah, that one.
Is that distracting? Is it?
It's actually in the middle of your presentation.
Okay. I'm not exactly sure how to move that out of the way. There we go. Should we try again?
Yep.
There we go. How's that?
Okay, it's now on It's okay now,
It's
We
a lot
good?
better.
but it's not totally removed.
It's a lot better.
A lot
Fantastic.
better. Yeah.
Fantastic. So, I'll just pause. Marley, would you, and Amanda or anyone on the call, do you have any questions around this kind of methodology and how you would engage people remotely in using this?
I am curious to know how you get it to work so that you show a part of a story and then leave it with others to figure out, and then how do you take them through like the next solution so that it makes sense?
Yes. So the way in which we do that there's two different ways. Of course, face to face, it's relatively simple. There's 500 people in a room, say. You break a group of 500 in teams of 8. They're around a round table. The video gets played on a big screen. Everybody sees the same video. You pose a dilemma or a question to them. In that previous little video I showed you, it showed a climbing example of do you cut the rope or don't you? That's the dilemma. The team then discusses the dilemma, and ultimately they make the decision as to what they would like to do. And they would indicate in a face-to-face environment, they would indicate that they've made their decision as a team. They would stand up and they would indicate that they're ready to move on, that they've made a team call. And of course, if you've got 500 people in the room, you might have 100 teams. You would typically see something like 50% do one option and 50% do the other. So that's how it works in a face-to-face environment. In an online environment, we make use of the breakout room functionality that exists in all these platforms, or most of these platforms anyway. So we would play in a like the plenary, like what we've got now. We'd play the dilemma, the video, and then we'd set up a breakout room where teams go and have that same conversation they would have in a face-to-face environment around a round table. They'd have that in a breakout room. Then they'd come back and they'd make their choice. That's the one way we would do it, Amanda. And the second way we would do it, depending on the size of the audience, is through polling. So let's say there's 2,000 people on a call. You're not going to do it in breakout rooms. You're going to do it via the polling function, and people choose option A or option B, and then it builds the same way. So different ways depending on the size of the audience that we're dealing with. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, it does. It's when you've got those multiple options in the pathway, it's hard to contemplate virtually how you get people to the end result. And of course, I desperately want to know what happens to you as you're falling down the mountain just then.
The way in which it kind of unpacks, of course, is that as the adventure progresses, you get a certain fragmentation. So you have different storylines developing in a room or online, but it's not infinite amount of storylines. So at the top level of these virtual adventures, you typically get something like, there's between 4 and 6 video-based decisions. And at the top layer of the decision tree or outcome, you get up to 6 different options, depending on how we design the decision tree. So the best way to think about it is there's hundreds of hours of adventure content. We've got many, many different scenarios. And then listening from a client's business challenge or opportunity perspective, we would turn around and say, we think that an animal tracking simulation works well, and the scenarios within the animal tracking situation, these ones, and these ones would be able to highlight that particular learning outcome.
Okay,
Does
thank
that
you.
make sense?
Yeah, it does now. Yep, thanks.
Cool.
We actually have questions from our participants. So how long are these adventures and how many people can attend?
Yeah, it's a good question. The shortest you'd run one of these virtual adventures for would be 90 minutes. And the way in which we design them, sometimes it's going to sound a little strange here, so forgive me, but they can take days. But let me explain what I mean by that, is that the virtual adventures themselves are modular in their design. So all virtual adventures have really got 4 main components. The first component is really, is rather unoriginally called the introduction. And that talks to the why, the what, and the how. So why does mountaineering or mountain climbing, why are we doing a mountain climbing experience? Why does a mountain climbing environment replicate a business environment? What are we going to take out the experience? So highlight the learning outcomes early on, and how does the whole thing work? Along the lines of the kind of questions that Amanda asked over there. So the why, the what, the how. That's the first phase. The second phase is setting up a team for success. So although there'll be very few people that are on these calls that are animal trackers or big wave surfers or mountaineers, most people understand what it takes to pull together a team, a cohesive team. Clarity of goal, understanding the role, how we make decisions, what are our guiding principles, what's our definition of success. So we actually take some time to set that up at a conceptual level. It's got nothing to do with the technical part of the adventure itself. It's more, these are the basic principles of setting up a team. And then there's typically 2 stages of video-based decision making. So why I said that it could take longer than 90 minutes is that you could, of course, create a module that where you have your first or second module where you connect the mountain experience, that you set up your team. Perhaps you might make one decision on the virtual adventure, but that decision could be something like, do you go and rescue a team or not? And that decision then can set up a really powerful conversation that the organization needs to have around ethics. So it may not be about the mountain climbing experience. It might be about something that they're dealing with on a day-to-day basis from a business point of view. And it could be a couple of hours, that session. But you would then, once you've dealt with that session, you then come back onto the mountain and the adventure would continue. So you can create them, say over a 2-3 day long period. You can create a mountaineering or a trekking expedition that basically is woven through an agenda, so that you end up having a integrated agenda that is exciting, it's different, but it's also very powerful in the way in which it accentuates some of the client content that they're wanting to run. So that's the duration, anything from 90 minutes through to literally days. And then size-wise, the biggest group we've ever run face-to-face was 3,000. And in an online environment, we've had a webinar recently for over 5,000 people. So it gets big. The smallest group we've ever done is 6. And those ones are typically slower, and they set up for senior management, and we really do unpick why people make decisions, and we can obviously go a lot slower and becomes much more detailed, deep dive into decision making and why we make the decisions we do. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, thank you, Ian. More questions came in. So how many of these games do you have? And another one is, what if there was another option apart from those you offer?
Molly, can you repeat that first question again?
How many of these games do you have?
Okay, we've got 4 adventure themes. So we've got animal tracking, we've got kayaking, we've got surfing, and we've got mountaineering. And we've got hundreds of hours of footage. And at my guess, we've probably got 60 or 70 different scenarios in those. So there's many. There's many. We've been filming now for the best part of 15 years in those various adventure environments. Sorry, what was the second one again, Marley?
What if there was another option apart from those you offer?
Yeah, good. That's an excellent question. So when we, of course, in the field and we're filming, there's not just 2 options. The world is not binary in those kind of environments. But what we do when we set up these experiences up front with participants is that we explain that what we've done as an adventure team is we've run through the different options, and the 2 that we present to you today are the ones that ultimately were the ones that were on the table for us before we made the final decision. So it's not like a video game. This is more like, the best way to describe it is it's more like a football field where there are boundaries to the experience, and the learning happens within those. We can get creative within those boundaries, but it's not a completely dispersed video game-like experience. Cool.
Thank you, Ian.
Any other questions, Vali? Well, I can't see it on the chat function here. So
There's none. Yeah, be good.
I think the best way to show you is just to give you a bit of a taste of a use case of a client in Singapore on how we use this. So before I show you the video that shows you how it kind of works, I'll just give you a bit of an overview. It was for a bank called UOB in Singapore, and their need was to embed a series of competencies within the organization across the bank. And you'll see how we co-designed with their learning and development team a solution that ultimately they drove within the bank itself to get people across these competencies and how it all worked. So this is kind of how we engaged the group at scale. So here goes. I'll play it. My name is Ian Schubach. I'm the director of Peak Teams, and we've been selected to be a partner with UOB to drive the Seed Foundation program throughout the junior level of management within UOB. At the launch, we had two components that were running at the same time. One was they were going on a kayaking expedition down the Okavango River. As a team, they were faced with a bunch of different decisions, and we asked them to actually make those decisions and live with the consequences. So that was the one component. We took them on a journey down an African river. But at the same time, what we were doing is we were relating that journey to the Seed Foundation program. Why Seed Foundation? It's really got two main purposes. One is to build your skills and give you tools to build your skills in a business sense. But the other part is that there are lessons that we can take for ourselves in our own personal lives about implementing Seed.
I think in your journey, we need to acquire some knowledge too. Knowledge about how to manage ourselves and how to manage others.
Why are we doing a simulation? First up, what we're trying to do with a simulation is give you an experience that allows you to make choices, that allows you to really address those various learning styles or preferences that we all have about interacting with others, about being able to touch things, to feel things, to work your way through something. That's why a simulation is important.
We're onto something great. I think we're onto something wonderful here, right? It's the first time that we are doing something that has a simulation element built in, and I think it's really powerful.
You know, one thing we know for sure is that empathy is a key ingredient to trust, and you build empathy by sharing experiences. So shared experience, greater levels of empathy, higher levels of trust, better performing individuals and teams.
I thought it was interesting with staying true to the theme because we were expecting sort of an adventure theme. And I stepped in and I saw kayaks, I saw tents, and I was like, oh, what's going on, man? And something that UOB has not done before. And the whole showing versus telling today really worked for me. It was interactive.
Yesterday, you came for the launch, and it was in Africa. Today, we're going to Mount Cook in New Zealand. For the Seed Foundation program, this is the part where you make the links between the seed behaviors and what you do every day. But we're going to do it in a very fun way. We're going to do it with a journey up a mountain.
So on day 2, we actually went through a simulation. It's a mountain climbing simulation called Reach for the Summit, from literally leaving Sydney as a climbing team all the way through to summiting Mount Cook. Does your ability to reach the summit of the highest peak depend on another team's failure? No, not at all. We need to focus our competitive tension outside of UAB. That if you waste energy competing between silos in the same organization, that is enormously destructive.
It's all about behavior, really. Leadership is all about behavior. Catching the team spirit or getting the team all fired up is all about behavior. So I believe, he's really coming from a very good angle of getting into the behavior of leaders like us.
So the next step in the process is really to train some of the local UOB trainers, the internal people within UOB. Then we're going to train them, empower them, and give them the capabilities using some of the Peak Team's content to further embed the SEED leadership competency frameworks throughout the region.
Parts of the program that offers much opportunity for us to do things very differently in this company. And I don't see this as a training program. I see this as a program that we can use to actually shift the culture of the company, in the sense that we are building a cadre of people that's going to up-level how we're going to be a leader in this company.
To see the transition in the people, in the audience, in managers within UOB, from being quietish to begin with, and then all of a sudden super excited by the end of the period, that has been a wonderful experience for us as Peak Teams facilitators getting involved in the project. So I hope that kind of gives you a bit of a sense of how the whole thing works, a kind of a use case. I'll hand it over to both Amanda and Marley now for for additional questions if you've got them. Happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you so much, Ian, for the wonderful presentation. So yeah, it's really interesting that you have the concept of wildlife and incorporating it into the workplace. And yeah, the adventurous games with themes are cool. Yeah, I never considered myself as an adventurous person, but I would love to try that. So there you go. We're now entering the Q&A part of the session. Actually, we've addressed some of the questions during his presentation, but if you have any more questions, clarifications, comments, so now is the perfect time to bring that up, and Ian will address them. So go pop it in the chat box or unmute yourself. I'm sorry, Karen Jepson, you're saying something?
Sorry, Molly, I didn't get that clearly. Can you perhaps repeat that?
Oh, I'm questioning Karen Jepson because I think he's saying something.
All right. Okay.
But any questions, guys? So yeah. Can you create a different adventure from scratch?
Yes, so that's an interesting one. So what we sometimes do is that a client will come to us with a problem that they're trying to solve, particularly something like something at scale, like that example for UOB, where they don't want to necessarily just have an adventure that's been pre-created. That they turn around and say, well, these are the outcomes that we want. Could you and your team go into the field and create an adventure for us that's ours? Yes, absolutely, we do that. It's we don't do it as often as we would deliver our existing portfolio because it's so expansive, but we definitely do that. It takes a bit of time. It's not something that you can turn around quickly, but 6 months, if you've got 6 months and you've got a big strategic initiative that you're trying to plan, a change program, whatever it may be, that's the kind of thing that we would definitely engage with a client. A lot of that is what we would call as co-design. So we would work together with a client in building that solution.
Okay, thank you. And another question from Amanda. What is the most common leadership issue you address with organizations?
Sure. Each organization has different ones. But the one that is probably most prevalent that we face every day is this kind of idea around people focusing on the technical nature of the work, and that there's typically, in our experience, particularly as you progress higher up in the hierarchies of organizations, there's a deficit of soft skill ability in organizations at a senior level. So it's not so much the technical skill where we find there's a deficit, but certainly in the top top levels of management, there's a deficit in what we would call these days soft skills, and it's leading others, and it's influencing others, and it's navigating complex organizational pathways. It's those things that typically are common for us to deal with.
Okay, all right. So any more questions from our participants? So I think while you all are thinking of a question, I have one for you. What do you think are some of the leading indicators of a disengaged workforce?
Yeah, thank you, Molly. I mean, one of the for us, some of the alarm bells would ring would be, that there's a lack of feedback when it comes to communication. If you're finding that most of the communication in your organization is from top down and you're not getting a lot of response coming back, that's always a sign for me that the organization is at risk of being disengaged. That would definitely be one, is the way in which communication flows in an organization would be one. The other would be, of course, if you start losing quality people. I mean, we all lose quality people at different times. That's how organizations kind of evolve and work. But if there's if there's unnaturally high levels of unwanted attrition, that for me is always a sure sign that the culture isn't what it should be. Those would be two that sort of stand out for me. I suppose the other one that I would think about is whether people throughout the organization, or when people throughout the organization can't articulate the reason that they're there. That if there's a lack of understanding as to why we exist as an organization and what my role is in achieving that, if that's not something that is clearly understood, that for me is one of those things that would again give me signals that our organization needs to be, or our leadership needs to be more clearly focused on communicating the why to our people. So those would be three. There's many though.
Yeah, all right, thank you. I agree. And you talked about the experiential learning earlier, right? So I think the question would be, what role can experiential learning play in delivering leadership programs at scale?
So hopefully in those videos you kind of got a sense there, Marley, of that. I mean, for me, what tends to happen in a lot of big transformation projects, or even like a merger and acquisition, or even when a senior leader takes on a new division or part of an organization, the focus almost invariably is around how this kind of works from an organizational design perspective. How does this either save us money or make us more money, or that's kind of typically the focus that's really that drives that. For me, people need to be engaged both emotionally and rationally. And I think experiential learning, and it doesn't have to be adventure, but learning by doing is a crucial part to connect with people's emotions. And ultimately, people respond to both rational reasoning as well as emotive needs. And I don't think we do that well enough. And I think experiential learning does that. We happen to use adventure as our sort of mechanism and metaphor to get people connected emotionally, but there's many ways to do that. Hopefully people got a sense of that from the videos.
Yep. Okay. Thank you. And yeah, another one. What was your best ever adventure, and what did it teach you about leadership?
Man, and that makes me almost a little sad right now, because we're in lockdown, so I'm now starting to busting for an adventure. I think the most transformational adventure for me was my first mountain climb, to be honest. I mean, ever since I was a child, I was interested in the African bush, and I had many experiences in the African bush and adventures in the bush that shaped who I am. But I only started climbing in my mid-20s, and there was a tragedy in my family, and part of that climb was about processing that tragedy in my family, and standing on a peak for me after that was in memory of somebody special to me. And I think that was transformative for me as a person, and that adventure still resonates with me today. So I would say that one for me was probably the most meaningful one. My first mountain climb, it was in the Andes in South America, and it was rushed. It wasn't well thought through. I was underprepared. I had no idea what I was doing, but it was very impactful for me.
Thank you for sharing that. So yeah, will there be any more questions from the participants? Or for Ian, is there anything you'd like to highlight before we come to an end?
No, I just want to thank everyone, of course, and most importantly, of course, Marley, Natasha and her team, and Amanda, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to actually talk about a topic that I love, and that's and is dear to my heart, which is obviously adventure, but then using adventure in a way that hopefully makes workplaces more interesting, more exciting, and different, and more meaningful. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to share with you about that. I mean, I think that's all I've really got to say on my side.
All right, thank you so much, Ian. So yeah, as mentioned, we have a few minutes left to wrap things up, and I think we're just right on the clock. So thank you everyone for bringing up your questions, and Michael for addressing them all. So we would love to receive feedback from you. So flash right in front of your screen is a QR code of the feedback form. So yeah, the link is also sent into the chat box. So head right on and tell us what you feel about today's session and how we can improve, or if you have any suggestions for our next events. And while you're doing that, let me take this moment to thank, firstly, our guest expert for today, Ian Schubeck, for the wonderful session. Thank you so much. And
thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next people team for bringing this event into reality. And of course, the warmest thank you to all the audience that we have here for participating and making this discussion engaging. So if you find this session useful for you, we highly encourage you to check the other sessions that we have for the whole month of August. So this has been Marley from People, and we will see you all at the next session.